Good day, everyone. Welcome to our panel discussion on connecting the dots, achieving success through thematic learning and career pathways. My name is Chuck Klinker. I am the Executive Director of Education Programs for Vanner Construction Management. And again, I welcome you to our discussion. So we'll go through the introductions, the presentations on Raisbeck Aviation High School, Science and Math Institute, and Benson Polytechnic High School. Then we'll have a panel discussion and the close. Our objectives: learn strategies for developing powerful partnerships within the school community, understand how the designs support thematic career-based learning environments, assess different models and scales of community engagement through varied project examples, and examine strategies for increasing diversity and inclusion within magnet schools. Our panelists today are Raisbeck Aviation High School, Reba Gilman, founding principal and CEO of Raisbeck Aviation High School, and Carolyn LeMay with Bassetti Architects, Science and Math Institute, Liz Minks with Sammy and Michael McGavick, McGranian Architects, Benson Polytechnic High School, Daniel Malone with Benson Polytechnic High School, and Diana Monska with Bassetti Architects. So the Raisbeck Aviation High School is a 400-student aviation-themed high school adjacent to the Museum of Flight at Boeing Field with extraordinary industry partners who have helped with both project funding and curriculum. Raisbeck Aviation High School was a 2015 McConnell finalist with outstanding planning, programming, and design attributes. Presenting for Raisbeck Aviation High School, as I mentioned, is Reba Gilman, was the founding principal and CEO of this nationally recognized high school, which is adjacent to the Museum of Flight in Seattle. She built the high school from the ground up, recruiting students and staff, securing funding, developing partnerships. Her energy and leadership ensured the success of the school's unique mission to prepare students for college, career, and citizenship in the context of aviation and aerospace. More recently, Reba served as the Museum of Flight's Vice President of Education and now serves as the interim principal and director of Highline Public Schools Puget Sound Skills Center. Caroline LeMay is a principal at Bassetti Architects and has been involved with school planning and design since 2002. She was a project manager for Raisbeck Aviation High School and was deeply involved from the visioning phase to the end of construction. Through her work on Raisbeck Aviation High School, Caroline has developed a strong appreciation of projects that create meaningful connections with their communities as they become active participants in the success of every student.
Thank you, Chuck. It's always an honor to talk about the high school that's now called Raisbeck Aviation High School. As Chuck mentioned, we were intent on developing a college-based program that truly prepared students for their future. We were in the last cohort of Gates small schools funded institutions. And as such, we were given the task of putting rigor into our program's relevance and making sure that the relationships that we developed were of true benefit to the school and to the community. Aviation was the context and the hook for student learning, and the hope was that creating a new school model would be a game changer for addressing many of the issues that were happening in Highline Public Schools and the region. Number one for us was low achievement rates in academics, particularly in math and science, and low graduation rates, as well as transition rates from high school to college. And of course, there was the supply versus demand crisis. Not enough students prepared to meet industry standards in aviation and other STEM fields. So at the time the concept for Aviation High School was developed, I was the director principal of Puget Sound Skills Center, which is a technical high school within Highline Public Schools serving multiple school districts. And what I knew from my background in career and technical education and being the head of the Skills Center was that students who came to learn about careers already had a passion, and that passion oftentimes had been developed around a certain field since they had been children. And what we knew is that if we could put that same passion in all educational programs and hook all learners on education, and doing something meaningful. We thought we had a solution to the problems that we were facing. So our goal was to blur the lines between academic and technical work, which was what we set out to do in developing what is now this beautiful aviation high school that's located on the campus of the Museum of Flight in Seattle, Washington. We also set out to be a model school. We wanted to be a school that would share our best practices in innovation and what we called lighthouse strategies for truly developing a learning community that spoke to students in a way that a regular high school would not. And it all happened because of, as you can see on this map, location, 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 and more than 200 aviation aerospace related businesses and organizations within a 3.5-mile radius of the school. Around Boeing Field is an airport, flight schools, engineering firms, and of course the Boeing company. And we knew that these types of companies would help us to develop partnerships that would sustain and support our vision and mission. So unlike most new schools that rely on bonds, levy dollars, and state capital contributions to construct a new school, Aviation High School's unique fundraising strategy relied on private investments for the majority of funds needed to construct a $43.5 million facility. It was truly a grand day when we opened our doors and were able to look at this plaque, donor plaque that stands in the hallway, and know that it was through all of these wonderful supporters that we were able to open our doors at Boeing Field. Dr. James Racebeck, a renowned aerodynamicist and entrepreneur, he was our first major investor, and therefore he earned naming rights to the school, and he brought others to the table. Dr. Racebeck's love of what he proudly proclaims as his school is rooted in high expectations for academic performance that prepares students for universities such as his alma mater, which is Purdue, and for the realities of work in aviation, aerospace, and STEM-related fields. As noted on this slide, each grade has a designated focus ranging from career research to mentorships to internships and culminating projects and applications for colleges. Student follow-up data provide evidence of the success of this career readiness program coupled with a strong, rigorous academic program, with approximately 70% of graduates working in an aviation aerospace field 5 years after high school completion, and colleges reporting that aviation grads perform more like college juniors than entering freshmen. Did this magnificent school, now located on the campus of the Museum of Flight, happen overnight? Well, no, certainly it did not. As you can imagine, we were nomads looking for a permanent home for a decade. This last slide takes us back to our humble beginnings and 2 temporary sites that we first occupied. The first on the campus of a community college, and the second in a very dilapidated former elementary school that was slated for demolition or for sale, if that could be possible. But nevertheless, really powerful learning took place inside the walls with project-based learning, students demonstrating what they knew to industry experts. And it was that very thing that convinced our supporters and stakeholders that we deserved a new school. It was time not to put the bucket out in the hallway and catch the raindrops. And all of this was possible. Inspiring kids in an environment like these two was possible through Vassetti Architects. They made learning the facility just speak aviation and come alive before students ever set foot on campus. Learning labs inside these portables, it was tremendous and wonderful conditioning for locating in a permanent school. And Caroline's going to tell you a little bit more about what the permanent school looks like.
Thank you, Reba. So yes, the forever home of the school is now located in a highly industrial environment, located between East Marginal Way to the east of the school, the Duwamish River to the west, the Museum of Light Aviation Pavilion to the south. And it also serves as the northern bookend of the Museum of Light campus. The site was chosen because, as Reba mentioned, it is perfectly located to immerse students in the aeronautic community. It's a tight site, so creating a three-story building was a perfect solution. The plan is a very simple bar with classroom wings on either side of a three-story atrium. The three-story atrium includes a grand stair, and it is really the organizing heart of the school. It features a red plane. You can see here, this plane was built by students, and a prototype winglet. This space is an inviting space for all students and visitors. It's a very active circulation space. It's one of the social heart of the school, and it's filled with natural light. The Commons on the second level looks over the multipurpose room on the lower floor. That space is used for assemblies, robotics, demonstrations, experiments, or simply to burn off some energy. The connection between those two spaces allows this space to transform into a state-of-the-art auditorium that can accommodate the entire school by extending the foldable seating and connect the second level to the space below. The labs are generous spaces filled with technology, flexible, and have good daylight, along with views towards the airfield next door. Some of my favorite places in the school are the flex spaces at each end of the classroom wings. These spaces are what students call their own spaces, where they work in teams, learn with and from each other, debate, or simply relax and hang out. This one also has a fantastic view towards Boeing Field. One of the goals at Racebeck Aviation High School was to provide a robust metal and wood shop to support the nationally recognized robotics program and the multiple hands-on science projects. The space was even equipped with a water jet cutter, so students are able to machine and test prototype parts for their robots at the school. And the machine shop is complete with an adjacent testing space that opens out to the outdoor courtyard, so experiments or presentations can easily move from inside to outside. So the school's design was developed to really reflect the curricular thematic of aeronautics. And we hope and believe that it is a very inspiring learning environment for students, for teachers, and that it is truly an inviting space building to mentors and industry partners. Last, we have a short video, 2 minutes, to just tell you more about the school and to see the school in action.
When we developed the concept for the school, we knew that we wanted to both prepare our kids for college and for work. And we needed flexible space in order to do that. The staff, I think, was just thrilled to be in a facility that they got to help design.
It was by far the most unique and diverse group of people I've ever worked with. There were industry leaders, there were people from the Museum of Flight, there were parents, there were many students, there were designers. It doesn't look like a high school. It looks like a place where you go and invent things.
I knew that kids, when they got involved in doing some kind of training that was real and authentic, they just lit up and they would do incredible things. When people drive down the East Marginal Way here, they see this wonderful Museum of Flight, and then they look over this direction and see this design that looks kind of like an airfoil, and it speaks to aviation before you ever see the name on the door.
Outside of the teaching and learning functions, one of the other aspects around the building's design that's really critical ties into our career readiness program is the mentor rooms, and those are used all the time, before school, after school, during lunch. We have approximately 150 industry mentors.
So the mentorship program here, we get assigned students generally in their sophomore year, and we stay with them all the way through graduation. We help them think about things like college opportunities, professional development, how they can learn how to have not only the hard skills that you need for a career in aerospace and STEM, but also the soft skills of dealing with people and networking, making professional connections.
They really let me tour and explore my different interests at different places and different companies. And so I got to see how engineering works in the real world.
So I think the most exciting thing about Raisbeck Aviation High School is that it really gives students permission to dream, and to dream big.
Our next presentation will be about the Science and Math Institute Environmental Learning Center, also known as SAMI, where 600 students engage in inquiry-based curriculum focused on the arts, science, math, environmental, and marine studies within Tacoma's 700-acre Point Defiance Park as their lens for learning. Partnerships include the Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium and Metro Parks Tacoma. This project was a 2018 McConnell Award finalist. Our presenters today, Liz Minks is the co-director of SAMI, and she embraces opportunities presented to live her values every day, especially with respect to the growing inclusive and supportive communities formed at SAMI. At Point Defiance Park, home to SAMI has been an impactful part of Liz's life since childhood. Supporting access to rigorous and collaborative learning opportunities in the park for young Tacomans is her joy. Liz's passion is to help foster that same joy in the students that visit SAMI. Also presenting is Michael McGavock, principal of McGranigan Architects. He led the planning and design of the Science and Math Institute project. He is a past president of A4LE's Washington chapter. His passion is understanding the characteristics of inspired teaching and learning cultures and collaborating on facility design that enrich them. Thank you.
Well, we're glad to be here, Liz and I. This project has been quite a journey, and for Liz, even a longer journey, because as we said, she grew up in Tacoma, and Point Defiance Park has been an important part of her life. We wanted to share the story of SAMI, talking about two themes in our presentation today. And the whole presentation is about thematic education, but the partnerships are the things that really have made SAMI what it is. And it's a place also that is very inclusive, and community is at the heart of the ethic of education at the Science and Math Institute. And what we'd like to share with you is what the experience of creating this school has been, and making a place for it has been a wonderful experience, and we'd like to share with you how that's turned out. So the first theme or the first topic is the thematic education through partnerships, and it wouldn't have happened without this place, Point Defiance Park. And Liz, you were part of starting SAMI and those 14 portables out in Point Defiance Park. And as we go through these images, why don't you talk about those early days and what it meant?
Yeah, so SAMI is the second of our three partner schools. And so I was on a team of folks that we envisioned schools being able to access the resources of their community, multi-million-dollar resources of the community, like museums, and in this case, this beautiful 700+ acre park. And so the idea that we can learn through the space and the classroom could become part of these assets, and then help the youngest Tacomans access these resources in a real and meaningful way was really exciting.
So we've got 700 acres of old growth forest with trails and some roads throughout, and most of the time the roads are closed to cars, so it's very easy to ride your bicycle around the park I love doing that on weekends, and people with strollers and just walking around. And then we've got this world-class zoo next door, the Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium. And it was in a parking lot down there in the bottom right corner where 14 portables were set up and SAMI was formed. And they used the park as their lens for learning, like Chuck said. And you'll see there's a pagoda building, we call it. We talked about these learning outposts all throughout the park. And the trick here was, if we zoom in a little bit, you can see this Environmental Learning Center. That's the new building. How do you not lose the environment as the place for learning, the waterfront, the zoo, and the forest, and not make the building the school? Yet it's the hub for where you go out to the woods, you bring back some artifacts, and you study it together. So we spent about a year looking for a place to put this building on the site. Remember that, Liz?
Yeah, I think that was a really important part, because the process for this whole journey, because the students were part of the planning process. The community was part of the planning process. And certainly the staff and the administration and Metro Parks, who manages all the parks in Tacoma. And so involving the community in this community building that we're hoping that everybody shares in the learning experiences was critical.
Yeah, and to deepen the partnerships, right, between the zoo and Metro Parks, and have it feel like this was their building, even though the school district funded it. We held all the planning meetings in the headquarters of the zoo with the zoo staff. And so after a while, we all realized, there's this undeveloped piece of property here next to our education center, and it's got 2 portables on it. One is for the zoo researchers and their community outreach, and the other one is the coordinator of all the volunteers for the zoo. And then, we're thinking about starting an early learning program. So if you could build all those things into your new building, you can have the site. And that was a master move. That was just
and it matched our vision perfectly, because for the students, similar to the other presenters here, to be able to access professionals and work alongside them, to have internship and experiences in this early childhood education opportunity, the zoo conservation and engagement team, and then of course these volunteers, that was a perfect match. And so having them in the building with us, they have office space with us, and then it's one space is bound by a kitchen so that we can develop relationships over cups of tea. It was just a game changer.
And in the video coming up here, you'll get to see the building in action, and then we'll come back after that and talk about the characteristics of the place and how they build community. Liz was a real inspiration for this. I guess somebody in the whole process talked about a semi-permeable membrane, and the openness of this place to its surroundings was something that we really, really tried to make a part of the experience of this place. So let's have a look at the video, and we'll come back.
The Environmental Learning Center is located in Point Defiance Park, which is the crown jewel of Tacoma's park system. It's a 760-acre park at the north end of Tacoma, and it is the perfect setting for an innovative high school and a wonderful place to be next door to our nationally accredited zoo and aquarium. The Science and Math Institute, it started off in a few nooks and crannies. They would be down at the pagoda, and they would be here at the zoo in some of the meeting rooms and some of the other public spaces, but very quickly realized that we were growing out of space and that we needed to find and build a dedicated space for SAMI to call itself a home.
Now that we have a space where we can actually do that with the lab space that we have, the bridge that just goes directly into the forest, a place to convene people, and just the energy of the SAMI students.
Our biology classes, or we have a marine biology class, that it's really nice that it's here because it's closer to the water so that you can go down and look at the water and come back and analyze.
When we were designing the space, we had a couple of things in mind, and I think one of the key ones was the idea of collaboration.
I love the garage doors because it makes it feel like more of a community, because you can have everybody in one space and you're talking to everyone, but you're also in different classrooms. And so once you get the feel of that, you can all commune together, and it's beautiful.
The zoo staff gets office space out of it as well, and we get to work in close proximity with the teachers and the administrative staff. So it's already led to some exciting collaborations and things, since we're right next to each other and see each other all the time. Having things like the BioBlitz here, having Science Central here, being able to share that story of that partnership is really powerful. And what I have seen is a lot of different groups, groups that focus on multicultural education, groups that focus on education for impoverished families, have been coming here and have been inspired by the work that we're doing together. So I think that is starting to spread its roots out.
I think we are at a super exciting time for exploring and celebrating nature here in Point Defiance Park. This is one more place where we can really all come together for the benefit of the students especially, and our community as a whole.
More than anything, it's just an inspiring place to be in. Collectively, we can come together and do so many more things and make so much more powerful impact on the kids that we serve.
It is just a living, breathing space that connects people to nature, and boy, I cannot imagine a better facility for doing that than the ELC.
I think it's really important to for us to understand that schools are more segregated than ever, and so it really takes intentional and thoughtful planning to try and create diverse communities. And so we seek through a regional lottery to where kids just put their name in to say, yes, I really want to be a part of the Science and Math Institute. And it could be because they're interested in the community or outdoor experiences, or it could be that they're really interested in science and math. But the kids are making an intentional choice to be a part of that, and they just go in. It doesn't matter if they have bad grades, bad attendance, any of that. Doesn't matter. It's just their choice. And so then we pull from each middle school zone. And so we're seeking to reflect the demographics of our city. Tacoma is a huge school district, and it's really wonderfully diverse. It is 55% free and reduced lunch. And so we really want to find ways to break down barriers to get the kids to this northern, corner of the city. And so it's just critical because we want kids to understand that we all have strengths and challenges, and be full members of this community. This building is really an embodiment of the vision of our values. So we operate off of community, balance, thinking, and empathy, and being able to help the students be in community and develop relationships is the priority, and this building really helps that happen.
Awesome, thanks.
Great. Well, thank you, Liz, and thank you, Michael, for your inspiring presentation on this 700-acre campus. Our next presentation is about Benson Polytechnic High School in Portland. It's a 102-year-old school that offers hands-on career technical education with 3 academies: arts and communications, health occupations, and industry and engineering. This 1,700 student landmark school is undergoing a major redesign that is bringing the school's programs into the 21st century through a deep integration of academics and career learning, along with robust industry partnerships. Our presenters are Dan Malone, Vice Principal with Portland Public Schools. He's been an educator for over 39 years. He spent 23 years at Roosevelt High School in Portland, helping create one of the first pathway curriculums in the nation. As a former teacher and now as an administrator, he has helped build and continues to advocate for the growth of CTE programs across the district and the state. Dan has seen the power that CTE programs have on their students. At Newburgh High School, Roosevelt High, and now Benson Polytechnic High School, Dan has witnessed how changes through the building process are helpful, impactful on its students, staff, and community. Diana Monska is a designer at Bassetti Architects and for 3 years has been heavily involved in the Benson Polytechnic High School project. She was a very key player in the master planning process and development of site-specific educational specifications. Additionally, she has been involved with extensive user group meetings as well as design advisory groups meetings. Through the planning and design process, she has been an invested team member with a keen interest in the success of this school and its inhabitants. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. So today, Dan and I are going to tell you about Benson Polytechnic High School. This 100-year-old CTE-focused school has over 12 unique CTE programs. It is centrally located in Portland, which gives it access to all students from all over the city. Although it's a public school, it is also a lottery process, which allows students to come from all neighborhoods and all parts of the city. The skills and experiences gained from these CTE programs provide students really diverse and non-traditional opportunities to pursue after high school as well. Today I want to tell you a little bit about the process in which we approach the master planning and design of the school. We engage with several local industry leaders and higher education facilities to understand new technologies or trends that were up and coming in the respective industries. So for example, automotive is moving towards electric cars. Engineering and robotics are quickly moving up in 3D printing technology and AI programming. Aviation is heavily moving towards drones. We also heard time and time again that having the skills to know how the trades were traditionally carried out would always remain important for the CTE education. And 100-year-old pieces of equipment were usually the way to go over new, more cheaply made replacements. So engaging with all these incredible partners I have up here on the screen really informed us that the spaces we designed needed to be able to evolve with the rapidly evolving industries. Our intent was to build in redundant systems for expanding mechanical and electric needs so that the spaces could work in a plug-and-play system. So if the engineering department gets a new plastics injection molder, the infrastructure would be there to support it. In community engagement, especially in the master planning phase, was really crucial. And we had this at all different scales for the development of the Benson design. So we had really diverse groups of students, teachers, community members, and alumni in our master planning committee and our design advisory groups. And then from that spectrum all the way to focus meetings with department heads and different student groups. That allowed us to receive a wide range of feedback for the design, the program adjacencies that would allow programs to cross-pollinate and increase innovation in their curriculum. In addition, a partnership grew between the drafting and architecture class with our firm. We hosted a class at our office, went in frequently for presentations during lunchtime. The Benson students built a model of Benson to have for their tech show, which is an incredible showcase of their work each year. And since then, we have also had 2 consecutive summers of architecture student interns. So all of this community engagement was so key to the development of our design.
And I think it's worth noting the alumni group at Benson is very vocal in a good way, but very connected throughout the city, given the 105 years of the school, and that those internships and those connections between industries, certainly even in the pandemic, stayed intact and will be moving forward as we continue our journey.
Dan, would you like to tell us a little bit about the unique CTE programs at Benson?
Glad to. In the current building, which by the way just got emptied this week in preparation for construction, these programs that you see on the slide have been long a part of what makes Benson Benson in the Portland area. The forge that you see behind you, nobody else in Portland has one of those. But what you will notice, and we'll speak to in a minute, is that these programs are based on industrial professionals. not necessarily teaching professionals, but people from industry who brought their passion and their knowledge to the classrooms over that 100-year period that made Benson, being at another high school, a little jealous of what they had in terms of CTE for all these years. So the one shift that we're making there, not as much radio now into broadcasting, as actually our radio program will move to another campus, but we'll be able to broadcast from the original broadcast center, a little switch in what we're doing. So we're trying to expand that program.
Dan, do you also want to tell us a little bit about the career pathways and the integration of academics and CTE programs?
Yeah, which brings that point about industrial professionals, many of whom have licenses based on that, teaching in all of these programs that you see listed. Now, as we move towards pathways, I will say again, as we've had them in Portland for a number of years and they went away, is the combination of the industrial professionals, the teachers with that passion and that knowledge about the CTE program, mixed with those who I will say came from a traditional educational background in science, in language arts, in social studies, that in a moment Diana will show you the shift that is happening in the building around that, which will allow all of those professionals to work together. Amazing how much work gets done in between classes in the hall when they're talking about, hey, how did you teach that? And hey, how did you do that? So that the teaching becomes better simply based on proximity.
Yeah, so that CTE and academic co-location was so important in the new design. So as you can see in our existing first floor, the academics is heavily in the west side or left side of the screen of the building, and the CTE focuses on like completely on the east side. So there's a very isolated chunk of CTE programming and then very isolated academics. However, in our new design, we really worked with the instructors and the students to understand the distinct relationships between the CTE programs, to co-locate those not only with each other, but then also across the hallway from academic classes. So you kind of get that pollination of, you may have a math class right across the hall from your construction class. And those programs have so much cross-pollination of learning that the curriculum begins to be supported by the physical space.
Almost segregated. When you talk to teachers at Benson today, you know, they're the teachers that teach up there, meaning the front of the building, and the teachers that teach back there, meaning the CTE programs. That will no longer be the case. And we'll also find the academic teachers saying, you know, I can tie into your program if I do X, Y, and Z. So the confluence of those two ideas in a hallway will be very powerful.
And then to also support this idea of the co-location of CTE and academics were kind of these modular suites that essentially build the school design. And so through flexibility and adaptability, which was one of our strongest guiding principles, we have these different blocks of space for classrooms, labs, and shops, and then support spaces. And to plug and play these different sizes of pieces, created these modular suites that over time can hopefully be flexible and adaptable for the school as the needs of the programs change over time. We hope the space could also change with those needs. And as we mentioned before, this school is still in design. So we just wanted to bring you through some of the renderings we have. Another really big aspect of the design, this is such a beautiful historic building, as you can see here from the west front view of the school, but that is also juxtaposed with the new portions of the building, which we hope to bring a very techy, forward-thinking, innovative look to the building. Lots of glazing. We have a huge solar array on the roof that starts to cascade down the facade of the building within the CTE courtyard, with these also huge bright orange, Benson orange overhead doors in the courtyard. Here's another view from the south of the school. We have a huge, I think, 200-foot radio tower with this great new signage going up. And then at the heart of the school, this is another big guiding principle, creating a new heart of the school where students can gather and learn together with great daylighting and opportunity for connection. And again, maintaining the historic integrity of the school is so important to honor the history and the past of this school, its great legacies, and moving forward, all the innovation that they can do. And brightening up our media center space, also another big collaboration hub. And that is all we have for today, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dan and Diana, for a very inspiring presentation on what your aspirations are for that school. We have time for a few questions, and I think I'll direct the first one to Dan and Diana. Is when the school opens, how do you anticipate the students will experience the new school as they walk in the door? Not necessarily of how they go, what they do in individual classrooms, but what will be their sense of the place? How will it affect their view of themselves, their aspirations? If you could just comment on that a little bit, please.
Happy to, because I was able to watch what Bassetti did with Roosevelt High School, and that first day that kids came back to the building, they just looked up and said, wow, somebody did this for me. And there was enough of, I'll say, the old building for them to feel at home. And I think when you look to the front door, the front foyer of the new Benson, it will look like home until you get past that front door. And then they'll look around and go, wow, no more pink tile, no more smell of oil and grease. Somebody did this for me.
Go ahead.
I think Dan makes a really good point there, with the aspects of the old building still remaining as well. And that goes with the physical building itself, but also, as I mentioned before, several pieces of 100-year-old equipment, that are getting a facelift as well. So those elements of the school kind of bring this new light and excitement, I think, for the kids. And it, as Liz said before, when you give these kids agency to, use a table saw or a bandsaw or a huge lathe to mill a piece of metal, they really take over it, and that's where they shine.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Reba and Caroline, I'll direct the similar question to you. You have experienced students coming into that new facility after being in two lesser facilities prior to that, and I presume you observed some of the same things in the students. But what have you seen now that you're operating the school, and how what the children are experienced and the difference it's made?
Well, I will answer, Chuck, that much like Dan, I think the students feel honored that a space would be created for them that, these students were the legacy makers. They were with our school for a decade before we finally located in a brand new school. And even the early students, the grads, they came back and celebrated with us, because they knew what it was like to learn in a school with insufficient technologies and equipment. And it was just, a grand day when we opened at our new site. Students and everyone celebrated the fact that we finally had the kind of building and environment that accommodated our vision and mission. So Carolyn, you may have a.
Yeah, you know, I think a sense of pride for sure. I've heard many students speak to that. And I think it's, you know, it's the facilities, but also the location within where the facilities is located, because they have access to all these professionals. I mean, you walk into these schools and there's always people from the different industries around, you know, SpaceX, or you know, all these really you know, state-of-the-art industries that are really taking these kids seriously. I mean, they see them as you know, their next up and coming employees. And so I think that really creates a, you know, a pride in them, and just kind of a you know, they take their education very seriously because of that.
Yeah.
Yep, I would add that when you walk through Raisbeck Aviation High School, you probably saw this in the video, but the galleries have storyboards of all of the people who supported the school, either monetarily or with hard work, doing all it takes to open a new school. And I think that's really inspiring to students to see that, wow, these are the people who worked hard to give me and future students an environment like this. So that's pretty powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a similar question with maybe a different slant to Elizabeth and Michael and your 700-acre school there. And I was reminded, I was listening to your presentation about a book I read some years back titled The Last Boy in the Woods. And its theme is children no longer get to go off into the woods and explore the way they used to a generation or two or three, when a lot of kids grew up on the farm, so on and so forth. These children come from various socioeconomic backgrounds. Some maybe never even gave a thought to going to a park or to spending time like that. What have you experienced along those lines?
I think this idea of the nature gap is a real thing, right? And we need to remove the barriers. And so I think the lottery really helps these youngest Tacomans access their resources. And before the building was built, we all had hopes and connected to the mission and vision of these high quality educational experiences. And I remember when they broke ground, we had a big beaker, like a chemistry beaker, and we had people write on little slips of paper, and I still have it, their hopes for the building, you know, being able to be connected to nature and use that as just kind of a jumping off point to go into these different spaces. Because before, we were in picnic shelters, like teachers were teaching humanities and science in picnic shelters and down on the beach and that kind of thing. And this really helped us to kind of have a gathering in a community space. And so we still want the kids to go back out into the forest and into the zoo and really access the park fully. And I think the building celebrates that. I think Reba was talking, I heard you use the word celebration. I think the building is a real celebration of our partnerships.
We did a planning exercise before we even knew where the building would be in the park, and they were using these 14 portables in a parking lot. And we asked students to put on a map of the entire park where their most memorable learning experiences were. And they were everywhere. They were on the waterfront. We got lost on that trail that one time. We had to get back, or something went wrong and we fixed it. There were no memorable experiences inside the portables. So that tells you something, that one, their ethic was working, that they wanted nature to be the learning environment. But then how do we not break that by building a new building? And so there's a good balance, I hope, now. And that I hope the students still talk about those memorable experiences, both out in nature, but maybe it's enhanced a bit with the environment to support it in the building.
Thank you. Thank you for those great insights. I have a question I'll direct to Reba and Caroline first. In your opinion, what makes these school models successful at creating and developing students' agency to influence their career choices and or their collegiate study successes? Reba, start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I think the fact that all three of the schools that we're talking about today were choice schools. And I think that in and of itself creates student agency. They don't have to come to our schools, right? So the fact that they choose to be there is and pursue something that they're interested in. They're surrounded by mentors. They have internships. And over time, the school develops such a strong reputation. And that's very, very attractive to students and their families. And I think that helps them realize that they have choice and they have a voice.
Thank you.
And I'll say from a designer perspective, I think that agency, we know kids all learn in a different way, and so it's always very important to provide different spaces that kids will feel comfortable in, right? So there's very small spaces where kids can be by themselves, or maybe two of them. Or a student and a mentor, and then I've shown we've shown a picture of those flex spaces where those can be a little bit more like 3, 4, 5 kids, or groups of teams that works on projects. So anyway, just to promote kind of that agency we're talking about, I think it's important to give kids different spaces that they will learn best in.
Great. And Dan and Diana, I'll kind of ask the same question as what you anticipate. Polytechnic High, there have to be a bazillion career directions, technical career directions that students can take. And how do you see the design of this school? How do you see the school will help them, will influence their career choices and or collegiate directions?
Currently, having just planned and finished graduation, 92% graduation rate, and 75% of those students receive some kind of scholarship to move forward. So I think that's part of the culture of the school. And now if you create that pathway system where you have academic classes across the hall from your CTE classes, you get a band of teachers, a group of teachers who are then supporting you in not just the CTE way, but in every form that would make you a better student and maybe broaden your experience on what you might want to do.
I think Dan said it perfectly. I think also, the CTE opportunity gives students alternative pathways. They don't just have to go to a four-year college after high school, but they also have skills to start an apprenticeship or, go to a two-year college and then get a job in the field or whatever it may be.
Question related to the discussion we've had already, but what makes these school models successful at connecting learning to applicable real-world challenges? I think the answer is fairly obvious on an overall basis, but do you have some good examples of what you've seen in that situation? I'll start with Elizabeth and Michael.
So Michael, do you mind if I jump in with Luis's story? Okay, so we have two pathways, that have lots of branches. So we focus on math and physical science or life science. And so the kids come in and they have foundational classes and then they move through those pathways and they're not tracked and they're very flexible. We don't have separate classes for gifted or special ed. It's full inclusion and project-based. And so one of the opportunities is our internship program. And so we have a student who wanted to be an architect. And so his internship was with Michael's firm, and he was part of the planning. He was doing this work, helping the community place the dots on their favorite experiences in the park. And so Michael is a mentor to him, and now he is an architect. His family couldn't get back over the border, and he didn't have a number, and so he was part of the Dreamer Act. And I mean, he had this mentorship, this really strong mentorship and relationship with not only the firm but Michael, and that is a amazing story that he pursued that. And we also know that kids take lots of different paths. We probably all have taken different paths to get to where we are, and so having that relationship with community professionals is really important to hear their story and have that mentorship. But then also we have an adjunct artist program where we bring in, like, we have a veterinarian who teaches comparative anatomy and physiology. And so the kids have a relationship with how he got there because he's really interested in teaching. And so having those community professionals and that the story and creating a building and a space for relationships, I think really helps the students see themselves in whatever they want to do. We help them be their best selves. So it doesn't have to be four-year college. It can be, they can take their path the best way possible.
Thanks.
Michael, do you have any stories about Luis?
Oh, we're going to talk tonight.
Oh, good. See?
Yeah, he went to the same college I did with Washington State University. So it's been great to follow him and stay in touch. He's a wonderful man. My takeaway is that this kind of education brings these young people into life. I was there for some of the interviews of these students coming in to the program and with their parents sitting alongside them, and then to see the same person 3 or 4 years later, like they know their passion, they know what they're going to do, they know what strengths they have, and they know how through the community they've been enhanced, they've been strengthened themselves. And that's so unique, I think, and being in the world as these schools are is it's essential. And so I'm glad students have these options.
Reba, you have the robotics lab, you have robotics competitions, you have students that work on teams trying to design, create things, then compete. I'm sure you've seen students learn about working together, about trying over, about failure and success. You have some examples of that?
Well, I think that, at Raisbeck Aviation High School, sports of the mind teams are really the key. We don't have a football team or a basketball team, athletics, but we do have the types of programs that require students to use their head, heart, and their mind well. And robotics is an example of that. And kids really, it's just amazing what happens over their time at the school when they are part of a collaborative team, one that, yes, may be competitive in a robotics competition or science Olympiad, but they are a team throughout that year. And it's the heart of the school. What they're doing, they're solving authentic problems, which is the heart of project-based learning. And to me, that is really what makes learning applicable. Is students they do a project, they solve a project. Kids at aviation do an environmental project with the Port of Seattle every year, and the port gives them a problem to solve, and they present that then to subject matter experts, and it builds their network, and they realize that I'm not just doing this as a school project, but the Port of Seattle is going to take my suggestions, and they may change the way they de-ice an airplane or something as a result of what we've presented as a team. So I think that's key to our schools.
Good. Dan or Dan, do you have anything to add to those thoughts as to what you've seen or what you anticipate?
Passion.
Yeah.
If a kid can tell you, show you, be that working with wood, working with digital media, working with patients in a health service area, working with metal, if they are passionate about that, they're successful.
Yeah.
It will follow them, whatever they choose to do. I've always asked kids when they're in my office, maybe not for the right reasons, what are you passionate about? And if they can tell me that, I don't get too worried.
Yeah, yeah. All three of these projects were an extension or an improvement on programs that already existed. I presume there's tremendous community support behind all of these programs. That was the case. Was there anything that anyone did in particular to generate that support? the designs of these projects look really great, and that's really important. Children have to see that these are inspiring places. So were there any naysayers or anything that anyone had to overcome in support for these programs from the general community? Go ahead, Reba.
Well,
And yours was funded by privately funded, and I will say the design of that is rather avant-garde, shall I say. So I'm curious if anyone kind of complained about putting that much money into design.
Well, yes, I think that there are always, you have friends and you have those who don't yet understand what you're attempting to do. So they question, why would a school like this get priority over another school that, a 40-year-old building that needs to be remodeled, updated. And I think that is just one of the opportunities and the challenges of designing something that is new, unique, and costly. You have to be able to defend why you're doing that, but that's why your industry supporters are so very important to developing a new school. They have to, if they can speak up for the need that's occurring in their industry, it makes all the difference in the world. So yes, partnerships were very, very important to us in developing the school. I guess one of the lessons learned, I would say, is that if you're developing something new and unique and very bold, you've got to expect that some doors are going to slam in your face along the way. And it's just, you have to make it fun to reopen those doors. And you do that with the more you learn and the more commitment and testimonials you have from the students and families and communities that you're serving.
Well, I have to say I've been myself very inspired by this whole presentation and discussion. I wish we could go on longer. It's been very enjoyable, and but I want to thank all our panelists for sharing your experiences and your thoughts and your insights with us. Very interesting, very exciting. And as Michael said, I just hope this leads people doing more and more of these type of career-based educational facilities. So again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you so very much. Thank you for our audience for your attendance, and have a great day.